Hey, can you hear me? Test, test, test. Test, test, test. Test, test. Okay, fantastic. Great. So I'm just going to wait a couple minutes. I'm going to go back and cover that page again. I'm not sure if I'm going to get most of the people that were there to return, okay, but I'm going to give them an opportunity to jump back in if they want to. Hopefully this mic works okay. Go back and cover that page again. I'm not sure if I'm going to get most of the people that were there. That was a bit eerie, honestly. Like, I don't talk politics very much, but to mention the CIA and have my audio cut out within 60 seconds was a little disconcerting. I don't talk politics very much. You're getting an echo. Yeah, I'd have my audio cut out within 60 seconds was a little disconcerting. I don't talk politics very much. You're getting an echo. Yeah, I'd have my audio cut out within 60 seconds was a little disconcerting. I don't talk politics very much. You're getting an echo. Yeah, I'd have my audio cut out within 60 seconds was a little disconcerting. You're getting an echo. You can't hear me? You can't hear me? Okay. Okay. You guys can still hear me right now, right? You guys Testing can still one. Hear me right now, right? Perfect. Okay. Yeah, I'm gonna use this microphone right here. Perfect. Hopefully, it sounds a little bit better than before. I'm gonna use this microphone right here. Hopefully, it sounds a little bit better than before. There's still a bad echo? Yeah, was there still an echo? Faint? Okay. Let me go ahead and turn down my system volume. Hopefully that got rid of it. Could be some redundancy going on. All right, cool. I'm gonna wait about probably four more, maybe 3 or 4 more minutes. Yeah, voice is loud. Okay. Let me crank this down a little bit more. I'm gonna go grab some more root beer and come back, and then I'm gonna see if I can get the webcam fired up, and then I'm gonna plow through the rest of this Michigan documentation. So if people come in, they ask. I'll be right back. Okay. The audio is a little too high. Oh dear goodness. Yeah, this Yeti is a pretty powerful mic. Let me turn down the input a little bit then. Okay, I hope that's gonna work. Okay, it's not working. Great. Okay, perfect. Good. All right. So Yeah, I'm gonna make you a moderator. Is that cool? Appreciate the help getting all that sound stuff sorted for me. And if we get a lot of people back, sweet. Thanks, man. That are trolling or something like that, you know. Okay, let me see if I can get the webcam up, and then I'll go ahead and start. Okay, perfect, good. Yeah, I was gonna try to get the my camera itself working, but it doesn't seem to be wanting to pop on. All right, so I'm gonna go back up a little bit, a tad more volume. Yeah, no problem. I do want to get it right, so let me just go ahead and fix that real fast. Okay, so is that okay? Hopefully that's a happy medium. And I do talk a little bit loud sometimes, so if it gets too loud, I do apologize. All right, I'm going to go back up a little bit more and kind of read through a lot of what I was saying before the microphone cut out previously. And if it is crackly, I do apologize. And yeah, let's see. I think I left off expert witness testimony regarding voter fraud. Okay, in addition to the above fact witnesses, this complaint presents expert witness testimony demonstrating that several 100,000 illegal, ineligible, duplicate, or purely fictitious votes must be thrown out. In particular, 1. A report from the Russell Ramsland Jr. showing the physical impossibility of nearly 385,000 votes injected by 4 precincts and townships on November 4th, 2020 that result in the counting of nearly 290,000 more ballots processed than available capacity, which is based on statistical analysis that is independent of his analysis of Dominion's flaws. That was the point that I really focused on before. It's 95,000 more votes that you received than you had outstanding. I mean, how does it happen? Obviously, there's a lot of fraudulent ballots being turned in. 2. A report from Dr. William Briggs showing that there were approximately 60,000 absentee ballots listed as unreturned by voters that either never requested them or requested and returned their ballots. And 3, a report from Dr. Eric Quinnell analyzing the anomalous turnout figures in Wayne and Oakland County showing that Biden gained nearly 100% and frequently more than 100% of all new voters in certain townships and precincts over 2016, and thus indicated that nearly 87,000 anomalous and likely fraudulent voters from these precincts. As explained and demonstrated in the accompanying redacted declaration of a former electronic intelligence analyst under the 305th Military Intelligence with experience gathering SAM missile system electronics intelligence, the Dominion software was accessed by agents acting on behalf of China and Iran in order to monitor and manipulate elections, including the most recent U.S. general election in 2020. Damning evidence. This declaration further includes a copy of the patent records for Dominion systems in which Eric Coomer is listed as the first of the inventors of Dominion voting systems.
Okay, Eric Coomer is a very corrupt person. He was working with Antifa, said Donald Trump was not going to get to win. He was going to fix that. Insert bad word here. Expert Navid Kishaveras, Nia, explains that U.S. intelligence services had developed tools, right? Hammer and scorecard. U.S. intelligence services that operate outside the United States, or just the CIA really, to infiltrate foreign voting systems, including Dominion. He states that Dominion software is vulnerable to data manipulation by unauthorized means and permitted election data to be altered in all battleground states. He concludes that hundreds of thousands of votes that were cast for Trump in the 2020 election were transferred to Vice President Biden. That's just stunning. The most poetic thing about this is going to court. This is no longer just talk show talking points. Like, we have experts, right, that know what they're talking about. They're going to be able to quantitatively prove that some of these anomalies actually happen. There are things on YouTube, like you can actually go to YouTube and watch videos that show CNN doing live streams of the election count that show the votes being literally taken from Trump and given to Biden in the moment. Live streamed. These and other irregularities provide this court grounds to set aside the results of the 2020 general election and provide the other declaratory and injunctive relief requested here within. So, jurisdiction advenue. This court has subject matter under 28 U.S.C., which provides the district courts shall have original jurisdiction of all civil actions arising under the Constitution, laws, or treaties in the United States. Okay, so they have jurisdiction because a constitutional case is being laid forward that our rights were being infringed. This court also has subjective matter jurisdiction because this action involves a federal election for the President of the United States. A significant departure from the legislative scheme for appointing presidential electors presents a federal constitutional question. The jurisdiction of the court to grant declaratory relief conferred by 28 U.S.C. The court has jurisdiction over the related Michigan constitutional claims and state law claims under 28 U.S.C. Venue is proper because the substantial part of the events or omissions giving rise to the claim occurred in Eastern District. Because the United States Constitution reserves for state legislators the power to set the place, time, and the manner of holding elections for Congress and the President, state executive officers, including but not limited to Secretary Benson, have no authority to unilaterally exercise that power, much less flout existing legislation. So let me think about this for a second. So this is basically just explaining that the court has jurisdiction. So a lot of people would be arguing, well, okay, well, this court doesn't necessarily have any kind of a right to change what's happening in Michigan. Michigan voters should decide where Michigan votes go. Why does the court have a right to change anything that happens in Michigan? And so the jurisdiction is this. And jurisdiction means like the ability for a court to have power over the people that are presenting their case there. The jurisdiction is this. What happened in Michigan violates your freedom and my freedom, right? It violates our constitutional guaranteed right to have our vote counted legally. When you have illegal ballots being dumped, right, into the election, what that does is it dilutes the power you and I have in choosing who represents us. And the entire point of representative government is that the people that are voting are given a say. And our say is diminished. It's marginalized when you have people that are going to use fraud, deceit, intimidation, and all the other tactics that are being alleged here to undermine the say that we're guaranteed by the Constitution to have. And because the Constitution does guarantee those things to us, the federal court, like where this lawsuit's being filed, has jurisdiction to provide relief to us and to rectify those claims. Now, unfortunately, there's not a lot of relief the federal court can provide. Really, the only thing the federal court can do is to order that the ballots, or a portion of the ballots equal to the number that we can prove are fraudulent, be removed from the vote count for that state. And of course, that would easily flip this state to Donald Trump, as well as Pennsylvania, and as well as Georgia, probably Nevada, probably Michigan, or Wisconsin. Each of the following plaintiffs are registered Michigan voters, right, and nominees of the Republican Party to be a presidential elector on behalf of the state of Michigan. Timothy King, a resident of Washoe County, Michigan. Marion Ellen Sheridan, a resident of Oakland County, Michigan. And John Errol Haggard, a resident of Charlevoix, Michigan. Each of these plaintiffs standing to bring into action as voters, as candidates for the office of elector under MCL, have a cognizable interest in ensuring that the final vote tally reflects the legal valid votes cast. As an inaccurate vote tally is a concrete and particularized injury to candidates such as the electors, which is what I was telling you guys, that it infringes upon our rights. We call that injury in court or harm. Affirming the presidential electors have Article 3 in prudential standing to challenge actions of Secretary of State in implementing or modifying state election laws. Each brings this action to set aside and decertify their election results for the President Office of the President of the United States that was certified by the Michigan Secretary of State November 23rd. The certified results show a plurality of 154,188 votes in favor of former Vice President Joe Biden over President Bush. And this is the meat and potatoes of the argument. A lot of people, on the left are saying things like, it's already been certified. It's over. Like, let it go, Trumper. See, that's not the way these things work. Yes, they certified it, but what the purpose of this lawsuit is trying to achieve is to prove that the certification should be rescinded or ruled null and void because of the constitutional injuries that you and I suffered, right? The certification is basically cementing the harms that these fraudulent actions cause to real voters. And the real voters are really, honestly, the ones that the Constitution is trying to protect. And, yeah, we want President Trump to win, and, we want our representatives to be elected. But the real harm that was done in this election was to you and me. That's who was attacked. It wasn't necessarily the Trump campaign as much as it was you and I. It was our right to exist and to be noticed as citizens. So that's why the federal court has jurisdiction. That's really what this is trying to establish. Plaintiff James Richard is a registered voter residing in Oceana County. He's a Republican Party chairman. And so you're going to see plaintiff, plaintiff, plaintiff. All these are people that are literally part of the lawsuit. And they are all voters arguing that their right to vote was diminished. And then you have the defendants. Okay, defendant Gretchen Whitmer, the governor of Michigan. Okay, another defendant, the Secretary Benson, and is the defendant in her official capacity as the Secretary of State. Okay, same as in Georgia, the governor and the Secretary of State are being targeted. I'm a little concerned about some of the editing problems with this lawsuit that I didn't see in the Georgia lawsuit. Secretary of State shall issue instructions and for the forthcoming elections and restrictions in accordance with the laws of the state. Local election laws must follow Secretary Brinson's instructions regarding the conduct of elections. Michigan law provides that Secretary Brinson advise and direct local election officials as to the proper methods of conducting elections. Secretary Benson is responsible for assuring Michigan's local election officials conduct elections in a fair, just, and lawful manner. Okay, defendant Michigan Board of State Canvassers is responsible for approving voting equipment for use in the state, certifying the results of the election statewide. Okay, statement of facts. Plaintiffs bring this action under 42 U.S.C. and under MCL 16861 to remedy deprivations of rights, privileges, or immunity secured by the Constitution and laws of the United States, and to contest the election results and under the Michigan Constitution. The United States Constitution sets forth the authority to regulate federal elections. With respect to congressional elections, the Constitution provides. Okay? So the Constitution sets the right to regulate the elections. that means that our rights can be protected by federal court. The times, places, and manner of holding elections for senators and representatives shall be prescribed in each state by the legislature, but the Congress may at any time, by law, make or alter such regulations. Okay, same as Georgia. With respect to the appointment of the presidential electors, the Constitution provides each state shall appoint in a manner such as the legislature therefore may direct a number of electors equal to the whole number of senators and representatives to the state which may be entitled in the Congress, but no senator, representative, or person holding an office of trust or profit under the United States shall be appointed an elector. Electors have to be you and me. Okay, they can't be like a county board member or something like that. U.S. Constitution. And it gives you the place where that law exists. Under the Michigan Electoral Code, the electors, the president, and the vice president for the state of Michigan are elected by each political party at their state convention in each presidential election year. Neither defendant is a legislature as required under the Elections Clause or Electors Clause. The legislature is the representative body which makes laws of the people. Okay? Regulations of congressional and presidential elections thus must be in accordance with the method which the state has prescribed for legislative enactments. While the Elections Clause was not adapted to diminish the state's authority to determine its own lawmaking process, okay, it does hold states accountable to their chosen processes when it comes to regulating federal elections. A significant departure from the legislative scheme for appointing presidential electors presents a federal constitutional question. And plaintiffs bring this action to vindicate his constitutional right for a free and fair election, ensuring the accuracy and integrity of the process pursuant to Michigan's Constitution. The right to have the results of the statewide elections audited in a manner such as prescribed by law. Okay, here we go. So this is a lot of really, really complicated, dense law. They're basically setting the stage for what they're trying to argue here, and we're getting into the argument. One of the things that we have a right to is we have the right as voters to have the results of a statewide election audited in such a manner as prescribed by law to ensure the accuracy and the integrity of elections. And that right is part of Michigan law. Okay, that's what the legislator has put into place, and that's what we're expected to be able to receive. The Michigan Constitution further states, all rights set forth in this subsection shall be self-executing. This subsection shall be liberally construed in favor of voter rights in order to effectuate its purpose. That means, like, you can take liberal, that means like kind of flexible understandings on how to best serve voter rights and effectuate or put into action its purposes. So, based on all the allegations of fraud, statutory violations, and other misconduct as stated here within, it is necessary to enjoin the certification of election results pending a full investigation. So because state law requires that we have the ability to have an investigation and an audit, we're demanding that we enjoin its certification results pending a full investigation and court hearing. So even though they're trying to push forward and they're trying to certify as fast as possible, jam this down our throats, they're really stating that, hey, this needs to be put on hold. I'd volunteer my time in the service system all day McMahon's and see if I can help them edit this kind of stuff. No punctuation here. All these words are glued together. Come on, guys. Legal background. Relevant provisions of the Michigan Election Code and election canvassing procedures. Michigan law requires Secretary Benson and local election officials to provide designated challengers a meaningful opportunity to observe conduct of elections, right? Did that happen? Challengers representing a political party, candidate, or organization interested in the outcome of the election provide a critical role in protecting the integrity of elections, including the prevention of voter fraud and other conduct, whether maliciously undertaken or by incompetence, that could affect the conduct of the election. Michigan requires Secretary of State Benson, local election authorities, and state and county canvassing boards to stop providing challengers the opportunity to meaningfully participate in and oversee the conduct of the Michigan elections and the counting of ballots. Michigan selection. code provides that challengers shall have the following rights and responsibilities. This is hard to read. An election challenger shall be provided a place within a polling booth or polling place. I'm sorry. An election observer shall be provided a space within a polling place where they can observe the election procedure and each person applying to vote. That's going to be a huge contentious issue. Michigan's trying to say already, no, we gave them a place. Yeah, where like somebody was 150 feet away from you at the furthest, and they couldn't see anything. An election challenger must be allowed opportunity to inspect poll books and ballots as issued to electors and witness electors' names being entered into the poll book. Also didn't happen. An election challenger must be allowed to observe the manner in which duties of the election inspectors are being performed. Lots of witnesses say that didn't happen. An election challenger is authorized to challenge the voting rights of a person who is the challenger has good reason to believe is not a registered elector. Any election challenger is authorized to challenge election procedure that is not being properly performed. An election challenger may bring to an election inspector's attention any of the following: improper handling of a ballot by an elector or election inspector, excuse me, in violation of a regulation made by the Board of Election Inspectors with regard to the time in which an elector may remain in the polling place, campaigning and fundraising being performed by an election by election inspector or the persons covered by the MCL. Again, more of this editing. Or any other violation of election law that's not being prescribed. An election challenger may remain present during the canvass of votes and until the statement of returns is duly signed. An election challenger may examine each ballot. That did not happen. An election challenger may keep records of votes being cast. Not sure about Michigan. I don't know if that happened or not. An election challenger may observe the recordings of absent voter ballots on recording machines. That didn't happen. So there's a lot that didn't happen. Some of it's questionable. Let's just say that some of this is proven. That didn't happen. That didn't happen. That didn't happen. But some of it's just kind of dismissed. Guys, that's still enough to overturn this. You know, the margin of error in Michigan is very slim. The Michigan, and again, the only thing that the Trump campaign has to prove is that there's a reasonable doubt to the, you know, the fairness in which this was conducted, or that individual rights were being I guess, restricted. The Michigan legislature adapted these provisions to prevent and deter vote fraud, require the conduct of Michigan elections to be transparent, and to assure public confidence in the outcome of the election, no matter how close the final ballot may be. This last part is important. It doesn't matter how close the ballot is. All of these protections are in place for constitutional freedoms, right? Michigan values the important role challengers perform in assuring the transparency and integrity of elections. For example, Michigan law provides it is a felony punishable up to 2 years in state prison for any person to threaten or intimidate a challenger who's performing any activity prescribed by Michigan law. That crazy unhinged guy that we all saw last week, that was like literally doxing the two representatives that were working in Michigan, comes to mind. You know, he released the name of the schools their children attended. It was just way over the top. 2 years in prison for that. Definitely a threat. It is a felony punishable 2 years in prison for any person to prevent the presence of a challenger exercising their rights, or to fail to provide a challenger with the conveniences for the performance of their duty. So all of these individuals, these people that barred entry into the polling stations to legal observers, they technically were breaking the law. You know, they were breaking the law, and they could be held, they could be, you know, in a lot of trouble. The responsibilities of challengers are established by Michigan statutes, right? Like, these people are protected by law, right? Let's see. An election political party organization interested in preserving the purity of elections and in guarding against the abuse of election franchise may designate challengers as provided by this act, except as otherwise provided in this act. A political party may designate not more than 2 challengers to serve in a precinct at any one time. A challenger shall be registered elector of this state, so you can't bring in like a Floridian. All right. A challenger may be designated to serve in 1 or more precincts. Okay. Challenger may indicate to the Board of Elections Inspectors too what they have authority. Challengers may change his authority. Okay. It's just laying the groundworks on who challengers can be and what are they expected to do. Okay. Secretary Benson in Wayne County violated these provisions of Michigan law and violated the constitutional rights of Michigan citizens and voters when they did not conduct this general election in conformity with Michigan law and the United States Constitution. Paragraph 48 is very blunt and looking pretty darn bad for the Secretary of State. The canvassing process in Michigan. Michigan has entrusted the conduct of elections to 3 categories of individuals: a board of inspectors, a board of county canvassers, and the board of state canvassers. The board of inspectors, among its other duties, canvasses the ballots and compares the ballots with the poll books, right? We've got a ballot, it's from, this individual. Are they in the poll books? They're there. Okay, his ballot's there, received at this time. All that's supposed to be documented. It's called canvassing. Such canvass shall be public, and the doors to the polling place and at least 1 door in the building housing in the polling places, giving ready access to them, shall not be locked during such canvasses. You're allowed to go where you want, to observe what you want. You're not supposed to be told, go stand there behind that, that little pen. You're supposed to be able to roam freely. The members of the board of inspectors, 1 from each party, are required to seal the ballots and election equipment and certify the statements. Like, there's so much they're supposed to be doing. All right, so there's to seal the ballots and election equipment and certify the statement, to return and tally sheets and deliverables to the statement of the return and tally sheets to the town precinct clerk, who will deliver to the probate court judge, and who will deliver the statement of returns and tally sheet to the board of county canvassers. Like, that was not happening. Like, they weren't even allowed to watch. And we already learned how the Dominion voting machines are. Like, they don't even, whenever you scan the ballot, it, shoots out a barcode. The barcode is your receipt. You can't prove anything with a barcode. Not unless you've got a barcode reader. You can't tell that it tabulated your Trump vote for Trump, right? So there's no, even if they were right there watching it, the system that they put into place in Michigan, thanks to the Dominion, doesn't even legally allow the mechanisms that the law demands. So this is going to really just collapse in court. Under scrutiny in a real court with a non-biased judge, the judge is going to literally, I'm guessing, look at the Secretary of State and say, what the hell were you thinking? Why would you put a system like this into place? Show me the logs of these machines. Oh, we don't have logs. Why? The machines don't keep logs. And you still bought them? You chose to use machines that don't produce logs? At what point does it become, pretty obvious that he knew that they didn't have logs, and that was good for him? All election returns, including poll lists, statements, tally sheets, absent voters' return envelopes bearing the statements required to cast an absentee ballot, must be carefully preserved, right? Have to be carefully preserved. They were thrown away. They're being shredded in Georgia. Good Lord. After the Board of Inspectors completes its duties, the Board of County Canvassers is to meet at the county clerk's office no later than 9 a.m. on the Thursday after the election. November 5th, 2020 is the date for the meeting. The Board of County Canvassers has power to summon and open ballot boxes, correct errors, and summon election inspectors to appear. Among other duties and responsibilities, the Board of County Canvassers shall do the following. The Board of County Canvassers shall correct obvious mathematical errors in tallies and reports. The Board of County Canvassers may, if necessary, for a proper determination, summon the election inspectors before them and require them to count any ballots that the election inspectors fail to count, to make correct returns in this case. And in the judgment of the Board of the County Canvassers, after examining the reports, the poll lists and tally sheets, the returns already made are incorrect or incomplete, and the Board of County Canvassers shall canvass the votes from the corrected reforms or returns. In the alternative to summoning the election inspectors before them, the Board of County Canvassers may designate its staff members from the county clerk's office to count any ballots that the election inspectors fail to count, and to make correct returns in the case. In the judgment of the Board of County Canvassers, after examining the returns, poll list, and tally sheets, their turns already, the returns already made are incorrect or incomplete, and the Board of County Canvassers shall canvass the votes from the corrected returns. When the examination of the papers is completed or the ballots have been counted, they shall be returned to the ballot box and deliverable to the persons entitled by the law to their custody, and the ballot box shall be locked and sealed and delivered to the legal custodians. So that's the way it's supposed to go down. Okay, so that's a lot, and yeah, you're welcome, man. That's a lot of really careful oversight. There's a system in place to make sure that if there's a problem and a ballot has to be recreated, then it's going to be recreated with a lot of oversight. And that's not what was happening. These things were being recreated in secret, recreated like individually. People sitting on the floor and stuff doing it, and it's all going to come out. There's witnesses that have said as much. Those are all felonies, actually. The County Board of Canvassers shall conclude the canvass at the earliest possible time in every case no later than the 14th day which of the election. I'm going to go ahead and skip down a little bit more, going to paragraph 53. The Michigan Board of State Canvassers then meets at the Secretary of State's office on the 20th day after the election and announces determination of the canvass, not later than the 40th day after the election. For this general election, that is November 23rd and December 3rd, there is no provision for the Secretary of State to direct an expedited canvass of the returns for the election of electors for President and Vice President. The County Board of Canvassers shall conclude the canvass at the earliest possible time, and in every case no later than the 14th day after the election. Okay, but if the Board of County Canvassers fails to certify the results of any election for any officer or proposition by the 14th day after the election is provided, we're entering that territory now, the Board of County Canvassers shall immediately deliver to the Secretary of the Board of State all records and all other information pertaining to the election. The Board of State Canvassers shall meet immediately and make the necessary determinations and certify the results within 10 days immediately following the receipt of the records from the Board of County Canvassers. The Michigan Board of State Canvassers then meets the Secretary of State's office the 20th day after the election and announce this determination of the canvass not later than the 40th day after the election. For this general election, that is November 23rd and December 3rd, there is provision for the Secretary of State to direct an expedited canvass the returns for the election of the electors for the President and the Vice President. Now, you might remember the Secretary of State is a defendant in this lawsuit, and we haven't even gotten to the charges yet. What they're doing right now is they're just laying out the procedure. This is the way it's supposed to work. This is how it's supposed to go down. And so that way we got something to kind of keep in our minds when we start really diving into the things that they were doing illegally. The federal provisions governing the appointment of electors to the Electoral College requires Michigan Governor Whitmer to prepare a certificate of ascertainment by December 14th, the date of the Electoral College meets. The United States Code provides that if election results are contested in any state, okay, and if the state prior to election day has enacted procedures to settle controversies or contest over electors and electoral votes, and if these procedures have been applied and the results have been determined 6 days before the electors' meetings, and the results are considered to be conclusive and will apply in the counting electoral votes. We're not heading towards that. This date falls on December 8th. The governor of any state where there was a contest in which the contest was decided according to established state procedures is required to send a certificate describing the form and manner by which the determination was made to the archivist as soon as possible. The members of the Board of State Canvassers are Democrat Jeanette Bradshaw, Republican Aaron Van Langverdede, I forgot his name, I heard it recently, Republican Norman Schenkel, and Democrat Julie Matzuek. Okay, Janet Bradshaw is the board chairman. Now you remember there was a 2-2 split here. The members of the Wayne County Board of County Canvassers are Republican Monica Palmer, Democrat Jonathan Kinglock, Republican William Hardeman, and Democrat Alan Wilson. Monica Palmer is also the board chairman. And so it's actually Wayne County where the split was at. And so there was a huge controversy there. And so I guess what had happened was initially Monica Palmer and William Hartman were just looking at all the irregularities that they had access to and decided, hey, we can't certify this. All this stuff went wrong. People weren't given access. There's crazy things going on with ballots, and there was no signature certifications, and there was literally no ballots being thrown out because the signatures didn't match. All these problems with Dominion voting systems, and you want me to put my name on that paper alleging everything is fine? Can't do it. Won't do it. No. Well, within 2 hours, these people were literally lambasted with all kinds of hate speech, threats. Their children's school was doxxed. It was really horrible. They went ahead and capitulated with, a requirement. Hey, we're going to go ahead and certify this under the condition that the Secretary of State is going to provide an audit. Well, the Secretary of State heard that and was like, we're not doing an audit. I don't have any legal requirements to have to follow, that requirement. Kind of did a little bit of double speech, didn't say that until after they certified it. And so then they went back and I don't even know if legally they can, but they tried to, and they are trying to decertify, right, their certification. And then they filed legal affidavits explaining that their lives were threatened, their homes were threatened, their children's schools were exposed, their addresses were released. Like, it was way over the top in the way that these individuals were attacked by the radical left. More than 100 credentialed election challengers provided sworn affidavits. These affidavits, among other matters, that the credentialed challengers were denied a meaningful opportunity to review election officials in Wayne County handling ballots, processing absent voter ballots, validating the legitimacy of absent voter ballots, and the general conduct of the election of the ballot counting. Okay, so we have a lot of affidavits stating there were problems in all these areas. They were denied opportunities to be able to ensure that legal stuff was going down. So here we get into the actual litigation. Yeah, the video of the doxing is horrible to watch. I mean, watching that, I just kept asking myself how I would react if that was my wife and someone was talking to my wife that way. And I'm just going to say I don't think I would handle it very well. Factual allegations and fact witness testimony regarding Michigan election code violations and other unlawful conduct by election workers in Michigan State, Wayne County, and City of Detroit employees. Okay. So Wayne County used the TCF Center at downtown Detroit to consolidate, collect, and tabulate all of the ballots for the county. The TCF Center was the only facility within Wayne County authorized to count the ballots. It all happened there. Republican election challengers were denied opportunity to meaningfully observe the processing and counting of ballots. That's a big problem. That's a constitutionally guaranteed right. They should never have been denied access to that. There's a difference between a ballot and a vote. A ballot is a piece of paper. A vote is a ballot that has been completed by a citizen registered to vote who has the right to cast the vote and has done so in compliance with Michigan election law by, among other things, verifying their identity and casting the ballot on or before Election Day. It is the task of the Secretary Benson and Michigan election officials to assure that the only ballots cast by individuals entitled to cast a vote in the election are counted, and to make sure that all ballots cast by lawful voters are counted and the election is conducted in accord with Michigan's election code uniformly throughout Michigan. They don't have a lot of wiggle room. Like, the laws created by legislature, the Secretary of State really has to follow the law. Challengers provide the transparency and accountability to assure ballots are lawfully cast and counted as provided in Michigan's election code, and voters can be confident that the outcome of the election was honestly and fairly determined by eligible voters. Wayne County excluded certified challengers from meaningfully observing the conduct of the election in violation of Michigan's election code. So pretty significant. That opens the door for fraud. They very clearly allege Wayne County excluded certified challengers from meaningful observing. This allowed a substantial number of ineligible ballots to be counted, as outlined in Section B. These systematic Michigan election code violations and the disparate treatment of Republicans versus Democrat poll challengers also violated the Equal Protection Clause and other provisions of the U.S. Constitution as detailed herein. They do think they're above the law. The following affidavits describe the specifics that were observed. This conduct was pervasive in Wayne County, as attested to in the affidavits achieved in Exhibit 3. Republican observers denied access to the TCF Center. Many individuals designated as challengers to observe the conduct of the election were denied meaningful opportunity to observe the conduct of the election. For example, challengers designated by the Republican Party or Republican candidates were denied access to the TCF Center, ballot counting location in Detroit, while Democrat challengers were allowed access. Okay? And then gives a bunch of exhibits, and these are individuals that are on record stating that this is true. And that's a lot of random people, man. A lot of people. Unlimited members of the media. We real so allowed. That's really hard to read. Okay, let me go over this. Unlimited members of the media were also allowed inside regardless of COVID restrictions, while Republican challengers were excluded. That just really burns my hide. So they're going to let certain people in that shouldn't have been in, like media, but the people that should be in weren't allowed to enter simply because they were Republican. Many challengers stated that Republican challengers who had been admitted to the TCF Center but who were not allowed to return. Hey, Bly. Take the turkey out and put it in the sink and fill it up with water. Thank you. Many challengers stated the Republican challengers who had been admitted to the TCF Center but who left were not allowed to return. So if you go get lunch, nope, not coming back in. Furthermore, Republican challengers who left the TCF Center were not allowed to be replaced by other Republican challengers, while Democrat challengers were replaced. So if you're going to leave, you're not going to get replaced and you can't return, but Democrats, yeah, no probs. As a result of Republican challengers not being admitted or readmitted, while Democrat challengers were freely admitted, there were many more Democrat challengers allowed to observe the processing and counting of absent voter ballots than Republican challengers. Okay? Democrat challengers outnumbered Republican challengers by at least 2-1. It's ridiculous. Many challengers testified the election officials strictly and exactingly enforced a 6-foot distancing rule for Republican challengers, but not for the Democrat challengers. What? As a result, Republican challengers were not allowed to meaningfully observe the ballot counting process, but Democrats could. Many challengers testified their ability to view the handling, processing, and counting of ballots was physically and intentionally blocked by election officials. And look at all these people arguing that. At least 3 challengers said they were physically pushed away from counting tables by election officials to distance that was too far to observe the counting. Challenger Glenn Sitek reported that he was pushed twice by an election worker, the second time in the presence of police officers, and he filed a police complaint. Good for him. Challenger Pauline Monti stated that she was prevented from viewing the computer monitor because election workers kept pushing her farther away and made her stand back away from the table. When Pauline Monti told an election worker that she was not able to see the monitor because they pushed it further away from her, the election worker responded, "Too bad." Tolerant left, right? Many challengers witnessed Wayne County election officials covering the windows of the TCF what? Ballot counting center so that observers could not observe the ballot counting process. Harassment, intimidation, and removal of Republican challengers. Many challengers certified they were intimidated, threatened, and harassed by election officials during the ballot processing and counting process. Okay, it's a constitutional violation right there. They're bullied. Constitutional rights walked all over. Look at all these people. All that testimony is going to take so much time to get through. And all this happened in one county, right? Like Wayne County. And Tisha Boomer was called a racist name by an election worker and was also harassed by other election workers. Zachary Vappel reported that an election supervisor called him an obscene name and told him to ask questions about and told him not to ask questions about ballot processing and counting. Don't ask questions. Kim Tokyo was personally intimidated and insulted by election workers. Let's see. Smith was a target of racial comments and asked, "What gives you the right to be here since you are not an American?" These are Democrats, right? You're not an American. You can't be here. And they call Republicans racist. Other challenges were threatened with removal from the counting area if they continued to ask questions about the ballot counting process. Challenger Kathleen DeVitella observed that Democrat challengers distributed a packet of information among themselves entitled "Tactics to Distract GOP Challengers." Literally, what? Challenger Kathleen DeVitella observed that Democrat challengers distributed a packet of information entitled "Tactics to Distract GOP Challengers." An election official told Challenger Schurer that election authority had a police SWAT team waiting outside if Republican challengers argued too much. We'll send the SWAT after you. An election worker told Challenger Jasmine Early that since English was not her first language, she should not be taking part in the process. These are Democrats. Election officials at the TCF Center in Detroit participated in the intimidation experienced by Republican challengers. When election officials would applaud, cheer, and yell whenever a Republican challenger was ejected from the counting area, poll workers ignored or refused to record Republican challengers. Unfortunately, this did not happen in Wayne County. Unfortunately, this did not happen in Wayne County. Many challengers testified that their challenges to ballots were ignored and disregarded. I guess it happened outside of Wayne County and other places too. As an example of challenges being disregarded and ignored, challenger Alexandra Seeley stated that at least 10 challenges she made were not recorded. That's just sickening. Boomer observed that ballots with votes for Trump were separated from other ballots. Yep. And we know what they can do with the Dominion systems, right? They can separate the ballots, don't even have to run them through the Dominion system, or they can run them through and then say, "Oh, these ballots had errors in them or something," and then have them completely removed. Patricia Boomer stated, "I witnessed election workers open ballots to Donald Trump votes and respond by rolling their eyes and showing it to other poll workers." That's a violation of the constitutional right to have privacy with your ballot. "I believe some of these ballots may have not been properly counted." I agree. And then we have Braden challenged 35 ballots for whom the voter records did not exist in the poll book, but his challenge was ignored and disregarded. And Christopher Sornak attempted to challenge the counting of ballots, and an election official told him, "We're not talking to you. You cannot challenge this." We're not talking to you. We're not talking to you. You can't challenge this. He's literally there with constitutionally guaranteed right to challenge, but he's being told he can't do it. And so what does he do? Does he tell the police officers, the SWAT team waiting outside to come inside and cap his ass? I mean, like, how do you handle that? Where do you go? That's why this is so egregious. That's why this has to be in federal court. We have no avenues to rectify it. I mean, we have no law enforcement that's going to help, ensure that we're being treated fairly. We don't. Democrats are never held accountable for this stuff. Where's DOJ arresting these volunteers that were working that were doing all this stuff? Where's the enforcement? It's just not there. And that's why they get away with it. When Stephanie Kay attempted to challenge ballots, an election worker told her that challenges were no longer being accepted because rules no longer applied. I mean, I can't even be mad. It's almost like they're telling the truth. Unlawful ballot duplication. If a ballot is rejected by a ballot tabulator machine, it cannot be read by the machine. The ballot must be duplicated into a new ballot. They call that curing, I believe. The Michigan Secretary of State instructed if the rejection is due to a false read, the ballot must be duplicated by 2 election inspectors who expressed a preference for different political parties. Michigan election officials, okay, manual, chapter 8, page 6, this is in the manual, added, thus the ballot duplicating process must be performed by bipartisan teams of election officials. It must also be performed where it can be observed by challengers. But Wayne County prevented many challengers from observing the ballot duplicating process. You know where this is going. They duplicated the ballot, but without someone being there to make sure the duplication was authentic. So let's say that I love Joe Biden, right? I love Pedo Joe. And so I've got all these ballots and I'm like, Trump, 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 Trump. I'm maybe marking across the ballot with my pen accidentally under, to where people can't see me, causing errors, taking that ballot, having it duplicated, and then everything on the ballot's the same except for Trump. That one goes to Biden. There's literally no one stopping this from happening. There's no one, if you were not allowing someone to be present to ensure that that's not taking place, you have to assume it is. Because, I mean, why wouldn't it? Challenger John Miller said he's not allowed to observe election workers duplicating ballots because the duplication process was personal, like voting. Like, that doesn't even make sense. I mean, duplication process was personal, like voting. Yeah. But his purpose was to be there to observe literally the duplication process. I guess it's kind of like arguing with stupid. I mean, like, you just go round and around with these people. Challenger Mary Schenkel stated that she was told by an election worker that she was not allowed to observe ballot duplication because if we make a mistake, then you would be all over us. Yes. Right. Because she should be. Or she could just tell you, hey, that's wrong. And you could smile and be like, oh, man, good catch, my bad. All right, here, check it out. Is that good? All right, cool. High five, right? Right? Because you all want to get it right. And that's the way it should be. Nobody's perfect, right? Somebody tells you, hey, you screwed up. Right? I mean, just like wink and nod at her. Be like, all right, cool. Here, give me a coffee, please. I'll wait. I mean, I'm getting tired. But if you don't act like that, then it really does create the impression that you do have something to hide and that you do have malicious intent. Another challenger observed election officials making mistakes when duplicating ballots. Like, they saw them doing it. That's sworn affidavit, guys. That's evidence. No evidence of fraud. Lots of it right there. Many challengers testified that ballot duplication was performed only by Democrat election workers and not bipartisan teams. Just Democrats doing it. Look, we got more than one person, multiple people. Democrat election challengers frequently outnumbered Republican poll watchers 2-1. Yeah, we already knew that. We kind of got that information above as well. There were 20 machines that had 2 Democrats judging the ballots, resulting in an unfair process instead of 1 Democrat, 1 Republican. So, I mean, like, it's kind of like it passes the eye test, but it's not actually authentic. Other people testified to the fact that Democrats numbered them 2-1. So collaboration between election workers, city, county employees, and Democrat Party challengers and activists. I bet this is a problem. People testified to the systematic and routine collaboration between election workers, Michigan public employees, and Democrat election challengers and activists' presence in particular to intimidate, harass, distract, or remove Republican election watchers. Shame. Election workers fraudulently forged, added, removed, or otherwise altered information on ballots, qualified voter lists, and other voting records. A lawsuit recently filed by the Great Lakes Justice Center raises similar allegations of vote fraud and irregularities that occurred in Wayne County. See Exhibit 4. The allegations and affidavits in the GLJC complaint are incorporated by reference in the body of this complaint. Election workers fraudulently added tens of thousands of new ballots and new voters in the early morning and evening on November 4th. That's when they stopped counting, and all those ballots were created and then dumped into the system. The most egregious example of election workers' fraudulent and illegal behavior concerns two batches of new ballots brought to the TCF Center after the 8 p.m. Election Day deadline. First, at approximately 4:30 a.m. on November 4th, poll watcher Andrew Cito observed tens of thousands of new ballots being brought into the counting room, and unlike the other ballots, these boxes were brought in from the rear of the room, right? I'm sure that would stand out. And then you've got Exhibit 4 here showing that as well. Mr. Cito heard other Republican challengers state that several vehicles with out-of-state license plates pulled up at the TCF Center a little before 4:30 a.m. in the dark of the morning or late night and unloaded boxes of ballots. All ballots sampled that I heard and observed were for Joe Biden. Look at that. All ballots. A second set of new boxes of ballots arrived at the TCF Center around 9 p.m. on November 4th, 2020, according to poll watcher Robert Cushman, contained several thousand new ballots. Exhibit 4. Mr. Cushman noted that none of the names in the new ballots were on the QVF or the supplemental sheets, and he observed computer operators at several counting boards manually adding the names and addresses of these thousands of ballots to the QVF system. Further, every ballot was being fraudulently and manually entered into the QVF as having been born on January 1st, 1990. Every single one. Yeah, I think they were being sloppy. I think they had no choice. Trump was up way more than they anticipated and expected. Lots of support. The computer fraud with Dominion wasn't enough, and so they had to quickly mass produce tons and tons and tons of ballots to be able to pull this off. And so they picked their most corrupt and compromised locations and used those as anchor points. Perhaps the most probative evidence comes from Melissa Carone, who was contracted to do IT work at the TCF Center for the November 3rd, 2020 election. I believe I've heard from this young lady. On November 4th, Ms. Carone testified that there were two vans that pulled into the garage of the counting room, one on day shift and one on night shift. She thought that the vans were bringing food. However, she never saw any food coming out of these vans and noted the coincidence that Michigan had discovered over 100,000 more ballots, not even 2 hours after the last van left. Ms. Carone witnessed all this illegal vote dump, as well as several other violations listed below. Election workers forged and fraudulently added voters to the qualified vote list. Many challengers reported that when a voter was not in the poll book, the election official would enter a new record for that voter with the birthday of January 1st, 1900. You can't do that. Good grief. The QLJC complaint alleges the Detroit Election Commission systematically processed and counted ballots from voters whose name failed to appear in either the qualified voter file or the supplemental sheets. Doesn't even show up. Could be an illegal alien. The GLJC complaint provides additional witness affidavits detailing the fraudulent conduct of election workers, in particular that of Zachary Larson, who served as a Michigan Attorney General from 2012 to 2020 and was a certified poll watcher at the TCF Center. Mr. Larson reviewed the running list of scanned ballots in the computer system when it appeared the voter had already been counted as having voted. An official operating the computer then appeared to assign this ballot to a different voter as he observed a completely different name that was added to the list of voters at the bottom of a running tab of processed ballots on the right-hand side of the screen. Mr. Larson observed this practice of assigning names and numbers to non-eligible voters who did not appear in either the poll book or the supplemental poll book. Moreover, this appeared to be the case for the majority of voters whose ballots he personally observed being scanned. Oh my gosh. The majority of voters, that guy was there watching being scanned, were for people that were not registered to vote, and they were being given generic birth dates, all of them. Same birthday, too. I bet that's going to be fun to see it released in court. Probably be a long spreadsheet of all these people born in the same day. All absentee ballots that existed were required to be input into the QVF system by 9 p.m. on November 3rd. Yeah, and that's the other side of this. Like, you're not allowed to add people like that. There's the deadline. That's the deadline, November 9 p.m. This was required to be done in order to have a final list of absentee voters who returned their ballots prior to 8 p.m. on November 3rd in order to have enough time to process the absentee ballots. All polling locations were instructed to collect the absentee ballots from the drop box once every hour on November 3rd. Jessica Canarn is an attorney who was acting as a Republican challenger at the TCF Center, Wayne County. Jessica Canarn's affidavit describes how an election poll worker told Jessica Canarn that the poll worker was being told to change the date on the ballots to reflect that the ballots were received on an earlier day. That's terrible. I'm going to go back a little bit. Jessica Canarn is an attorney. Okay. Her affidavit describes how an election poll worker told Jessica that the poll worker was literally being told to change the date on the ballots to reflect that the ballots were received on an earlier date. The poll worker. Jessica also provided a photograph of a note handed to her by a poll worker in which the poll worker indicated she and the poll worker was instructed to change the date ballots were received. Jessica Canarn's affidavit demonstrates that poll workers in Wayne County were backdating absent voter ballots so that absent voter ballots received after 8 p.m. election day could be counted. And that just casts the whole system into confusion. And she's an attorney. Imagine like being a poll worker and like, telling somebody that you're standing next to help you do this and not realizing they're an attorney. Didn't work out real well for you there, buddy. Plaintiffs have learned of a United States Postal Service USPS worker, whistleblower, on November 4th, 2020, who told Project Veritas that a supervisor named Jonathan Clark in Traverse City, Michigan, potentially issued a directive to collect ballots and stamp them as received on November 3rd, 2020, even though they were not received timely as required by law. This is egregious. We were issued a directive this morning to collect any ballots that we find in mailboxes, collection boxes, just outgoing mail in general, separate them at the end of the day so they could hand stamp them with the previous day's date. That we already know about that, and that's just horrible. And the FBI really handled that very poorly. On November 4th, I was instructed to improperly predate absentee ballots the day before. Next one, election workers changed votes for Trump and other Republican candidates. Challenger Atisha Boomer stated, I observed a station where election workers were working on scanned ballots that had issues that needed to be manually corrected. I believe some of these workers were changing votes that had been cast for Donald Trump and other Republican candidates. In addition to this eyewitness testimony of election workers manually changing votes for Trump to Biden, just directly doing it, there is evidence that Dominion voting systems did the same thing in a much larger scale with this Dominion Democracy Suite software. We're going to get into that again in a second. Election officials added votes and removed votes from other voters. Another challenger observed overvotes, and you mentioned overvotes a second ago in chat, who observed overvotes on ballots being corrected so that the ballots could be counted. And at least one challenger observed poll workers adding marks to a ballot where there was no mark for any candidate. That's just sickening. They're literally just filling it out however they want it to look. At least one election worker observed a large number of people who came to a satellite location to vote in person, but they had already applied for an absentee ballot. These people were allowed to vote in person and were not required to return the mailed absentee ballot or sign an affidavit that the ballot was lost in the mail. They just get to vote twice. Challengers report that batches of ballots were repeatedly run through the vote tabulation machines. We got multiple witnesses. Patricia Rose stated that she observed a stack of about 50 ballots being fed multiple times into a ballot scanner counting machine. 50 votes for Biden. Once, twice, 3 times. Those are 50 to 100 to 150 people that are no longer going to have their vote counted on the Republican side of the ticket, I'd imagine. The opinion contractor, Melissa Caron, observed this was a routine practice. Didn't happen once. Where she witnessed countless, more than she can count, workers rescanning the batches without discarding them first, as required in Michigan law, Michigan rules, and Dominion's procedures, which resulted in ballots being counted 4 to 5 times by the countless number of election workers. They did all this crap and it was still close. Trump won in a landslide. A landslide. All this fraud being leveraged against our president, our beloved president. And still they just barely were able to pull it off. Probably the most loved president of our generation. When she observed that a computer indicated that had a number of over 400 ballots scanned, which means one batch of 50 was counted over 8 times. Complained to her Dominion supervisor, she was informed that we are here to assist with IT work and not run their election. I hope they are going to jail. Ballots counted with ballot numbers not matching ballot envelopes. Many challengers stated that the ballot number on the ballot did not match the number on the envelope. But when they raised that challenge, those challenges were disregarded and ignored by election officials, not recorded, and the ballots were processed and counted. Multiple people swearing that happened too, not just one. For example, when challenger Abby Hellman raised the challenge that the name of the ballot envelope did not match the name of the voter list, she was told by an election official to get away. That the counting table she was observing had a different process than other tables. Yeah, I'm sure they did have a different process. Election officials counted ineligible ballots with no signatures and no postmark on ballot envelope. At least 2 challengers observed ballots being counted where there was no signature or postmark on the envelope. Challenger and Banker observed that 60% or more of the ballot envelopes in a batch bore the same signature on the opened outer envelope. So probably the same real loopy, easy to identify signature on one after another, after another, after another. Challenger William Henderson observed that a counting table of election workers lost 8 ballot envelopes. Just lost them. Exhibit 1 further alleges the Election Commission instructed election workers not to verify signatures in absentee ballots or to backdate absentee ballots and to process such ballots regardless of their validity. Multiple things there. Okay, so going to go back. The complaint further alleges the Election Commission, not just some scrub, the Election Commission instructed election workers to not follow the law. The Election Commission wanted election workers not to verify signatures in absentee ballots. The law is very clear. We started off this document going over the law and the procedures. The law demands that the signatures have to be verified. Never mind the Election Commission's telling them to backdate the ballots too, and to process the ballots regardless of their validity. Like, yes, if we've got names and we can find the people that were doing this and authorizing this and telling others it's okay, they will very likely go to jail. I mean, witness testimonies are damning in court. At least 2 challengers observed spoiled ballots being counted. At least 1 challenger observed a box of provisional ballots being placed in a tabulation box at the TCF Center. You know, the left like to, use the Hitler analogy a lot. And I taught Anne Frank for multiple years in the 8th grade. And, invariably 8th grade students, they're curious kids, always ask the question, well, Mr. J, like, why did Anne Frank do what she did? Like why did she go into hiding? And I had to tell them because it was a very dangerous situation in Germany. Well, why was it dangerous? And that caused me to have to do research. And it was because over time, and it took time for this to develop, all the problems in that society were systematically leveraged against a certain group of people. And so oftentimes the crimes and the evil that was directed at the Jewish people was being orchestrated by individuals that felt empowered to do so. And it is absolutely what's happening to the Democrat Party in America today. They feel empowered and justified in their hatred towards conservative white males, largely, because, yes, orange man bad, or because we're fascist, or all these bad terms they call us, not even really understanding what they are. And it's a horrible situation in which they say that they're against hatred, but they're becoming a literal specter of what they claim to stand against. Like, they are becoming what they hate. And, it's... No, fraud is never okay. Breaking the law is never okay. But this is, again, against the party that wanted to abolish ICE. So... there's a lot of problems in America. I just pray all the time for our country. Systematic violations of ballot secrecy requirements. And so Larson identified a consistent practice whereby election officials would remove ballots from the secrecy sleeve or peek into the envelopes, which is terrible when you see Trump votes. I mean, I'm sure they're tempted to take them out. Visually inspect the ballots and, based on the visual inspection of the ballots, determine whether to place the ballot back in its envelope and into a problem ballots box that required additional attention. Yeah, problem ballots. Look inside, see Trump. That's a problem. Ms. Larson also observed that some ballots arriving without any secrecy sleeve at all were counted after visual inspection, whereas many ballots without a secrecy sleeve were placed into the problem ballots box. So the differentiation between these ballots, despite both ballots arriving in secrecy sleeves, was perplexing, and again raised concerns that some ballots were being marked as problem ballots based on who the person had voted for, rather than any legitimate concern about the ability to count and process the ballot adequately. Poll watchers observed 2 batches of new ballots brought into the TCF Center after the 8 p.m. election day deadline is detailed in the GLJC complaint, paragraphs 79 through 81 and above. Daniel Gustafson further observed that these batches of ballots were delivered to the TCF Center in what appear to be mail bins with open tops. They're so sloppy. Literal just giant bins stuffed with Biden ballots. Mr. Gustafson, like an evil Santa Claus, right? Mr. Gustafson further observed that these bins and containers did not have lids, were not sealed. They're supposed to be, right? They have ballots. And did not have the capability of having a metal seal, which they're supposed to, nor were they marked in any or identified in any way to indicate the source of origin. They just showed up. An election challenger of the Detroit Department of Election Offices observed passengers and cars dropping off more ballots than there were people in the car. Somebody pulling up with like 30 ballots. Remember all the ballot harvesting allegations earlier on? Project Veritas catching that one guy? That kind of stuff happening, right? An election challenger of the Detroit Department of Elections office observed ballots being deposited in a ballot drop box located at the Detroit Department of Elections after 8 p.m. On November 4th, 2020, Matt Sinitar came forward, who independently witnessed, while walking his dog, a couple delivering 3 or 4 large plastic clear bags that appeared to be express bags, as reflected in photographs taken to a U.S. postal vehicle waiting. Like the postal vehicle was waiting for the pickup of trash bags of ballots. What? The use of clear express bags is consistent with the USPS whistleblower Jonathan Clark and what he was claiming. Ballots for and the USPS is complicit. They're helping with this. Yeah. Ballots. I'm so glad this is going to court. Ballots from deceased voters were counted. One Michigan voter stated that her deceased son had been recorded as voting twice since he passed away. Imagine how heartbreaking that is and how hurtful that must be. Expert witness testimony supporting indicated widespread voting fraud and manipulation. Approximately 30,000 Michigan mail-in ballots were lost, lost or misdirected. And approximately 30,000 more were fraudulently recorded for voters who never even requested them. Never requested them, didn't get them, was told they voted, and they didn't. The attached report of William M. Briggs, Ph.D., summarizes the multi-state phone survey data of 248 Michigan Republican voters collected by Matt Brainerd, which was conducted from November 15th to the 17th and covered voters in Arizona, Michigan, Pennsylvania, and Wisconsin. Dr. Briggs reported the Brainerd survey sought to identify two forms of errors involving unreturned mail-in ballots that are indicative of voter fraud, namely, error 1, those who were recorded as receiving absentee ballots without requesting them, and 2, those returning absentee ballots but whose vote went missing, marked as unreturned. Dr. Briggs then conducted a perimeter-free predictive model to estimate, with a 95% confidence of prediction intervals, the number of ballots affected by these errors was 139,000. Now there's math going on here, right? And so there's a lot of aggregation going on. And so what he's doing is he's taking the lowest number with 95% accuracy, and that lowest number is a margin that I think is 2 or 3 times what Trump needs to take the state of Michigan. Lots of fraud. So many different errors. In respect to error 1, Dr. Briggs' analysis estimated that up to 36,000 ballots out of the 139,000 were recorded for voters who did not request them. And then 34,000 of the 139,000 were recorded for voters who did not return them. And then, so taking the average of the two types of errors together, about 45% of those ballots are troublesome. Again, that's more than enough votes to turn the election to Trump. These errors are not only conclusive evidence of widespread fraud by the state of Michigan, but they are also fully consistent with the fact witness statements about the evidence regarding Dominion presented below insofar as these purportedly unreturned absentee ballots, providing a pool of 60 to 70,000 unassigned and blank ballots that could be filled in by the Michigan election workers, and I'm sure they were filled in, Dominion or other third parties to shift the election to Joe Biden. With respect to error 1, Dr. Briggs' analysis combined with the statements of the Michigan voters in the Brainerd survey demonstrated that approximately 30,000 absentee ballots were sent to someone besides the registered voter named in the request, and thus could have been filled out by anyone, and then submitted in the name of another voter. With respect to error 2, Dr. Briggs' analysis indicates that approximately 30,000 absentee ballots were either lost or destroyed. And then you have to think about also the fact that they weren't doing signature verifications either. So if you get the damn ballot and you just write on there like Tom Cruise and you send the damn thing in, they don't care. And guess what? They look up and see if that you're in the voter registration file and you're not. Oh, I can't find this guy here. They add you. So, I mean, as long as you could find a ballot and then scribble on it, just make sure that you mark Biden. You didn't have to date it. You didn't have to sign it. You didn't even have to be in the voter damn rolls in order to be counted. It was counted anyways. I mean, like, that's so beyond the pale that it kind of is hard to articulate, but that's what they were doing. Fraud at a massive, massive scale. There was no check and balance in place to ensure that the mail-in voting scheme that was being implemented had any semblance of fairness. And that's just how unpopular Joe Biden is, was, and remains. Nobody wanted him. The deep state wanted him because he's senile, incontrollable, but the American people uniformly rejected him. A red tsunami is exactly what it was. Trump dominated hard. All these different levers of fraud were pulled one after the other after the other. And the great thing for the Trump movement is we only have to overturn a couple of them. And we could probably do a lot more, just a couple of them. And yes, Federal court has legal jurisdiction to overturn the certification of voting results that have been proven to be fraudulent or infringed upon the constitutional rights of the electors in that state. So CNN talking about how all these states have already confirmed and it's over. No, that's not. It's not over. The court system still has a role to play. Moving on, statistical analysis of anomalous and unprecedented turnout increases in specific precincts indicated there were at least 40,000 excess voters in Wayne County, at least 46,000 in Oakland County. I'm not sure what that means. I think I know what it means. I think that excess voters are more than there should have been. The attached affidavit of Winnie Kinnell, Ph.D., analyzes the extraordinary increase in voter turnout from 2016 to 2020 in a relatively small subset of townships and precincts outside of Detroit and Wayne County and Oakland County, and more importantly, how nearly 100% or more of all new voters from 2016 to 2020 voted for Biden. I mean, I was more than 100% do it. I mean, and how is it that Joe Biden, who was the sleepiest, most unenergetic candidate ever, inspired people like this many people to just vote? Just doesn't hold water. Using publicly available information from Wayne County and Oakland County, Dr. Quinnell first found that for the votes received up to the 2016 turnout levels, the 2020 vote, Democrats versus Republicans two-way distributions tracked 2016 Democrats versus Republican distributions very closely. So prior to it, it was very close, what it should have been, which was 55-45 for Wayne County, right? And 54-46 for Oakland County. Democrats were winning those places, right? Republicans pulling in 46 part of the vote. Still, Democrats winning. It's legal. However, after the 2016 turnout levels were reached, the Democrat versus Republican share shifts decidedly toward Biden by approximately 15 points, resulting into a 72-28 DR split for Oakland County and a 70-30 for Wayne County. And that is when the ballot dumping started. What is even more anomalous and suspicious is the fact that nearly all of these new votes in excess of 2016 came from a small number of townships and precincts where the increased Biden vote share is nearly 100% or over 100% for Biden. For example, in the township of Livonia in Wayne County, Biden gained 3.2 voters for every one new Trump voter. Biden received 97% of all new votes over 2016 and 151% of all new voter registrations. In township of Troy in Oakland County, the vote share shifted from 51 to 49% in 2016. This was a close toss-up to 80-20% in 2020, with Biden receiving 98% of the new votes, above 2016 and 109% of voter registration. What? Looking countywide, Biden gained 2.32 new votes over 2016 levels to every one new Trump voter in Wayne County. No, that never happens. It's never happened in the history of American elections, and it'll never happen again. You're never, ever, ever going to see a candidate that's doing so well in South Florida and really, really liberal, strongholds, doing so well in all these places, suddenly just bomb out in an area that had last been 50-50. I mean, it's like, I'm a Republican. I don't know any Republicans that didn't vote for Trump that voted for him in 2016. I do know Clinton voters that came to Trump. It's just on its face, this is just hard to swallow. So over 130,000 ineligible voters who have moved out of state illegally voted in Michigan. And we read a lot of that already. It's kind of on its face what it means. Going on to D, there were at least 289,000 more ballots processed in 4 Michigan counties, okay, on November 4th than there was processing capacity. Oh, this is a great point. So there were at least 289,866 votes processed in 4 Michigan counties on November 4th than there was processing capacity. The expert witness testimony of Russell James Ramsland which is described in greater detail below, identifies an event that occurred in Michigan on November 4th that is physically impossible. The complaint includes a copy of his posting and Exhibit 103. Looks like I'm missing something here. 38, 39. I'm not sure why it starts off with lowercase, but reflected in the data are 4 spikes totaling 384,733 ballots allegedly processed in a combined interval of 2 hours and 38 minutes. Yeah, right. For 4 precincts and townships in 4 Michigan counties. Based on Ramsland analysis of the voting machines available at the reference location, he determined the maximum processing capability during this period was only 94,867 ballots. It's kind of like a printing machine. Printing machines print at a certain speed, right? They do. All of them are different. You're not going to spend, 2 hours of printing machine and have somebody come back and see 70,000 pages. That's not going to happen. And so what happened there? They went into the Dominion voting system and then they created all those entries. That's my guess. It's the only thing that makes sense. Let's scroll down. Factual allegations regarding Dominion voting systems. Evidence of specific fraud. Wayne County used ballot tabulators that were shown to miscount votes for President Trump and Vice President Pence and instead count them for the Biden-Harris ticket. On the morning of November 4th, unofficial results posted by the Antrim County Clerk showed that Joe Biden had over 7,700 votes, 3,000 more than Donald Trump. Antrim County voted 62% in favor of President Trump in 2016. The Dominion voting system's election management system and voting machines, which were used in Antrim County, were also used in many other Michigan counties, including Wayne County, were at fault. However, voting malfunction equipment or defective ballots may have affected the outcome. Affected the outcome of a vote on an office appearing on the ballot. Michigan Manual for Boards of County Canvassers. These vote tabulators failures to use the same mechanical malfunction that under MCL requires a special election of the precincts affected. So, evidence of specific fraud used ballot tabulators that were shown to miscount votes for President Trump instead of counting them for the... Okay. So basically they're saying that the machines that were known to be fraudulent were being used. After discovering the error and reporting the unofficial results, the cleric worked diligently to correct the unofficial results by reviewing the printed totals tape on each tabulator and hand entering the results for each race, for each precinct in the county. What Secretary Benson fails to address is what would have happened if no one discovered the error. For instance, in Wayne County, where the number of registered voters is much greater than Antrim County, and where the tabulators were not being individually tested. So, I mean, that was just a happy accident catching that. And I think we all know what would have happened had that error not been counted. That would have happily went to Biden, and nobody would have thought twice about it. That's how susceptible these things are to screwing up. Wayne County used the same Dominion voting tabulators as did Antrim County, and Wayne County tested only a single one of its voting tabulating machines before the election. Just one. The Trump campaign asked Wayne County to have an observer physically present to witness the process during the testing. Wayne County declined. They denied the Trump campaign the opportunity to be physically present. Representatives of the campaign did have the opportunity to watch a portion of the test of a single machine by Zoom video. The pattern of incidents shows an absence of mistake, always in favor of Biden. Okay. Evidence of other crimes, wrongs, and acts shall not be admissible to prove the character of a person in order to show action and conformity therewithin. It may, however, be admissible for other purposes, including but not limited to proof of motion, opportunity, intent, preparation, plan, knowledge, identity, or absence of mistake or accident. Tabulator issues and election violations occurred elsewhere in Michigan, reflecting a pattern where multiple incidents occurred. In Oakland County, votes flipped a seat to an incumbent Republican. A computer issue in Rochester Hills caused them to send us results for 7 precincts as both precincts votes and absentee votes. They should have only been sent to us as absentee votes, but instead they went out as both, probably on purpose. This Oakland County flip of votes is significant because it only reflects a second system error, where within both favored the Democrats again. Precinct votes were sent out to be counted, but they were also counted twice as a result of an error that was caught on the recount, where precinct votes should never be counted outside of the precinct. Instead, they are required to be sealed in the precinct. Dominion voting machines and forensic evidence of widespread fraud and defendant counties. The state of Michigan entered into a contract Dominion Systems democracy suit, and then included Dominion Systems democracy suit in January 2017, which added a fundamental modification. Dial-up wireless results transmission capabilities to the ImageCast precinct, and results transmission using the Democrat suit results transfer manager module. There you go, direct violation of Michigan law. The law clearly states, and we read it together, you are not allowed to have an election machine or a ballot machine that connects to the internet, and these things do. Whereas the same Dominion software in an updated contract with Pennsylvania, unlike in Michigan's contract, sets forth the standard of requiring physical security. No components of the Democrat security suit shall be connected to any modem or network interface, exactly what I just said, including the internet at any time except when a standalone local area wired connection configuration, which all connected devices are certified voting machine components. Okay, you can't have these machines hooked up under the same internet, I guess, umbrella as cell phones and like computers and laptops and stuff like that. You know, one infected device on a network can wreak havoc to everything else. Basic cybersecurity. The Michigan contract Dominion voting systems democracy packages include language that describes safety and security, which in part makes the risk of potential breach clear, where keys can be lost, despite the fact that they provide full access to the unit, while it is also clear that the electronic access provides control to the unit and the ability to alter results. I mean, these machines have the ability to alter results installed within them. Why the hell would you want like an authentic, fair, legal voting machine to be able to literally change in real time who won? Like, why would you put that functionality into these devices? Why would you design a machine that has the ability to take votes away from someone else and give them to somebody else without having a log system? It has to be for fraud. It's corrupt. It really is. There's no other solution. The ImageCast tabulators are unlocked by an I button security key, which is used to authenticate the software version, decrypt election files while processing ballots during the election, encrypt results filed during the election, provide access control to the unit, and it is used to anticipate that the I button, the security keys, may get lost. Therefore, any substitute key created for the same tabulator will allow the unit to work. So, I mean, not only could they not get lost, they could just be distributed all over the darn place. In late December 2019, 3 senators, Warren Klobuchar and Wyden, and House member Mark Pocan, wrote about the particularized concerns. Now, we've read this before. The concerns are pretty serious. They are all related to these machines not being adequately secured. So we got red flags in Dominion's Michigan results for the 2020 election. The expert witness testimony of Russell James Ramslin analyzes several red flags in Dominion's Michigan results for the 2020 election and flaws in the system architecture. So Dominion's manipulation of election results enabled Democrats to engage in further funding fraud violations above and beyond the litany of violations recited here. So Antrim County glitch was not an isolated error, but may have affected other counties. The only way to know for sure if that happened is to do an authentic audit, to go in, roll your sleeves up, and then dive into the data. Dive into these machines. They have to be open, the data has to be extracted, and it has to be looked at. Okay, and this needs to be done in America, not in Germany, on Dominion servers. Dominion needs to be cut out of this, out of the loop. Okay, this glitch would not be an isolated error, but would cause entire ballot uploads to read as 0 in the tabulation patch. Oh my goodness. Provisional ballots were accepted properly, but in-person ballots are being rejected. Zeroed out, interchanged, or flipped. Accordingly, Mr. Ramsden concludes that it is likely that other Michigan counties using Dominion may have the same problems. Functional vote counts and raw data strongly indicate voting manipulation through ranked choice voting algorithm. Mr. Ramsden's analysis of the raw data provides vote counts rather than just vote shares in decimal form, provides highly probable evidence that in his professional opinion demonstrates that Dominion manipulated votes through the use of their additive or ranked choice voting algorithm. Okay, so if you don't know what the ranked choice voting algorithm is, basically it's when you can give Joe Biden, for every single vote he gets, a weighted score of 1.3, whereas Donald Trump gets a weighted score of a 0.7. Mr. Ramsden presents the following example of this data taken from Dominion's direct feed. So we have the state, we have the timestamp, EEV, we have Trump, and we have Biden. I'm not really sure what I'm looking at here. I'm looking at the timestamp, and timestamp's moving from earliest time to latest time at the bottom. I'm not sure what the EEVP column represents or stands for either. But I am looking at the Trump column, and I'm looking at the end. You know, Trump ends with less than he started, right? Biden ends with more than he started. So as the votes come in, Trump's vote decreases. I'm not sure how that happens. Mr. Ramsden describes how the RCV algorithm can be implemented and the significance of the use of fractional vote counts with decimal places rather than whole numbers, and demonstrating that Dominion did just that to manipulate the votes. For instance, blank ballots can be entered into the system and treated as a write-in. Then the operator can enter an allocation of the write-in among candidates as he wish. The final result then awards the winner based on points, the algorithm in the computer, not actual votes. The fact that we observed raw vote data that otherwise decimal places suggests strongly that this was in fact done. Otherwise, votes would be solely represented as whole numbers. Why wouldn't it? How do you get a decimal number in an election? Strong evidence that Dominion shifted votes from Trump to Biden. Third red flag. Okay, this major shift between the two political parties is the tabulation of the turnout increased, and more importantly, that change in voting share before and after 2 a.m. on November 4th. Under tabulated voter turnout, approximately 83%. Trump was generally winning between 55 and 60%. Yep, and then we have that gigantic, huge dump. Well, I am going to have to probably stop here, guys. I am fading pretty fast, got a sore throat. I'm going to definitely finish this tomorrow. I'm leaving off on page 45. I'm going to go back over. A lot of these are red flags, and I'm going to have to cut this stream short. I didn't realize it was 5:27 in the morning. The Kraken's been released, though, and I'll be honest. I to summarize kind of like what I've noticed is that the case in Georgia, as Ms. Powell indicated, is absolutely enormous. The level of fraud that I believe that she's got proof for and is well on the way of presenting to the court systems is diverse. It's wide-ranging, and it's absolutely colossal. And she's going to make a lot of waves and create a lot of jurisdictional precedent. and in Georgia, as the Georgia court system starts litigating in a lot of these things, it's going to make it a lot easier to apply suit in another state when you already have precedent. And so it's going to get very, very messy. And this is anything Miss Powell is able to do to make our country more secure. That is just an added bonus. That is sugar on top of the ice cream sundae, man. Like the real, I guess, hopes that the Trump campaign have rest with Rudy Giuliani and his separate but equally effective court case that him and Molly McMahons are running. But thank you for joining. I really appreciate you guys. I do think I'm going to start getting into more political videos. You know, I'm a big video game player, but I do enjoy politics. It really matters. The older I get, the more I care. And so thanks again for joining. Hope everybody is doing well. And that's it. Go ahead and give me a like and a follow if